Good morning, guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be working in Unit 16, and we are going to be doing pages 12 and 13. Page 12 will be your notes. Page 13 will be working out some problems. If you do not have the packet printed, you can just look at your packet and you work on your tablet, or you can work on a separate piece of paper. So, what we're going to do today is identify functions from tables. Now, we've talked about three functions. Now, the three different types of functions we've learned so far. This function here is a line. This is called a linear function. So you guys remember that name, and you can tell what it is by looking at the picture. Our next function is a parabola, which is called a quadratic function. And that you also know by looking at the picture. The next function, which you have just graphed, we just started this, is called an exponential function. Now, exponential, it's usually an exponential function, keywords, double, triple. And anytime they talk about bacteria, it's always going to be an exponential function. A linear function, the key word for linear is constant. It has a number that it goes up. Constant. Your slope is constant. So what I'm going to show you today is trying to find out which function it is by not looking at the picture, but by looking at the table. So what they're saying to you is you can determine if a function is linear, quadratic, or exponential just by looking at a pattern from your table. We're only going to be worried about the y values. So you're only going to be worried and using the y values. So it says you can test whether a function is linear by finding the differences between the y values, which are called the first differences. So when we talk about first differences, it means the first time you subtract. So you subtract one time. So if you look at this table, and I always work from bottom to top. So I'm going to take 13, and I'm going to subtract 11, and I'm going to get 2. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 11, and I'm going to subtract 9. We're working backwards, and I'm going to get 2. Then I'm going to do 9, and I'm going to subtract 7, and I'm going to get 2. Same with 7. So we know my difference is going up by 2. So that is the same number. We subtracted once. That's constant. That means this table right here is a linear function. So if it's a linear function, we know when we graph it, it's going to look like this. Now, my next pattern would be a quadratic. A quadratic is similar. Okay, so we can test if a function is quadratic using the second differences. If the second difference is the same, then it is a quadratic. So that means instead of subtracting one time, right here we subtracted one time. Do you all agree? Here we're going to subtract 2 times. And the second time must be the same. So you start, and the first thing you're going to do is subtract the first time. So you're going to subtract negative 175 minus negative 252. Minus negative 252. Now be careful with your negatives and your minuses because you don't want to get a syntax error in your calculator. So you're going to do negative 175 minus negative 252. So this minus has to be the subtraction sign, not the negative sign. And you'll get 77. So now I'm going to try the next two. Negative 252 minus I'm going to minus negative 343. Put that in your calculator. Practice it now. Try it. Plug it in the calculator. You can stop the video if I'm going too quickly. You should get 91. Then I'm going to do the next one. Negative 343 minus negative 448. When I put that in the calculator, I'm going to get 105, and so on. So I know when I look at this first subtraction, they are different. They are not the same. Do you guys agree? So if they're not the same, that means it's not linear. So now I'm going to subtract again. I have to subtract all over again. So now I'm going to take my new numbers, 77 minus 91. And I'm going to get 14, negative. Then I'm going to do 91 minus 105. I'm going to get negative 14. And if you notice, these now, right here, are the same. Do you guys agree? So I subtracted how many times? Twice. If I subtract twice, then I know they are quadratic as long as they're the same. So that is an example of a function that's quadratic. So that means my answer there would look like that, quadratic. Now with the third one, I bet you can guess, this one is the only one that's a little different. If you subtract, say you subtract twice, if I subtract negative 160 minus 80, and I do my subtraction, and I do it again, and both times it doesn't work, then it's going to be exponential. And the reason it'll be exponential, as I'll show you, it says the ratios are equal. A ratio is not a subtraction, okay? So the ratios of the y values, when you think about ratios, you divide or multiply. So that's why this one is a little different. There's no subtraction. So I start at the bottom again and just do division. Okay, so I have negative 160, and I'm going to divide negative 80. And I'm going to get 2. Try the next one. Negative 80, and I'm going to divide negative 40, and I'm going to get 2. Try negative 20, divided by negative 10, I'm going to get 2. So this time we're multiplying by 2. If we're multiplying by 2, anytime you multiply, that's when it'll be exponential. And that means it's going to look like the last one. Okay? So those are the 3 types. And we'll go again. Okay? Linear, when you subtract once, they're the same. Quadratic, when you subtract twice, they're the same. Exponential, you divide or multiply, and they're the same. So let's turn the page. So everyone now is going to move on to page 13. And we have some tables. So this is a good way to practice. Put this in here. Let's look at number 1. So what I always do is, I know, well, linear, we subtract once. And we'll get the same number, right? Quadratic, I know we have to subtract how many times? Twice. Okay, and I know exponential is we divide or multiply. Okay, so look at our table. I always try to see if linear works first. So I'm going to come over here, and the first thing I'm going to do is 118 minus 90. Okay, 118 minus 90 gives me 28. So from here to here, 28. Then I'm going to do 90 minus 69. 90 minus 69 gives me 21. So that's 21. Then I'm going to do 69 minus 55. And I'm going to get 14. Not the same number, so it's definitely not linear. Let's see if it'll be quadratic. Let's do 55 minus 48, and I'm gonna get 7. So I subtracted once, not linear. So we know we could either be quadratic or exponential, but let's subtract again. Let's do 28 minus 21, I get 7. 21 minus 14, oh, I get 7. 14 minus 7, I get 7. So as I subtract all of these, I get the same number. So I know this is quadratic. Okay, that one, the thing is, all this work, these subtraction things, you don't have to write any of it down if you don't want to. You could just do it in the calculator and write the answers down. So let's try the next one. I always do my subtraction first. So I'm going to try negative 8.3. I'm going to subtract negative 12.3. Be careful with your negatives and your minus. When I subtract, I get 4. Let's try the next one. Negative 12.3 minus negative 16.3. I'm going to get 4. If you try these all in the calculator, you're going to notice, and you can try them, you're all going to get 4. Same number every time. You know it's going to be linear. Let's try number 3. Let's subtract. 7 minus 12. I get negative 5. Let's try 12 minus 17. I get negative 5. Let's try 17 minus 22. I get negative 5. Subtract once. Look at that. Look, right here. Subtract once. They're the same number. It's linear. So if you drew that picture, you know this would be linear. Okay. Now, number 4, you can try. I would try subtracting first, but when you subtract, you notice the first time, 32 minus 16, you can subtract these, you're not going to get the same number. But when I look at this, I notice, well, what's 2 times 2? 4. What's 4 times 2? 8. And I could also try, what's 32 divided by 16? 2. What's 16 divided by 8? 2. What's 8 divided by 4? 2. So I know we're here multiplying everything by 2. What happens when I multiply? It's not linear. It's not quadratic. This one is going to be exponential. Now you could use the calculator for this, and you could have subtracted them once, you could have subtracted them twice, or you may have already noticed that it's multiplying. That's why I say you're like a detective. You have to try and see. So what I want you to do now is try 5 and 6 all by yourself. Pause the video. See what you can do. See what you could figure out and see if you can do it. Numbers 5 and 6. When you're done, you can replay the video. Okay, pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. Now that you've finished 5 and 6 on your own, I will go over them with you to show you. So, 5 was a little tricky. You could do your subtracting, but if you notice, if I do 80 divided by 40, I get 2. 40 divided by 20, I get 2. 10 divided by 5, I get 2. So here, we're going to multiply by 2. When I multiply, here it is, right here. When I multiply or divide, I know it's exponential. And you could keep those notes with you the whole time. Okay, you can refer back, you could look at everything. All right. And then number 6, I noticed that when if I multiplied anything, it would be weird. Let's try a subtraction. So I'm going to do 57 minus 48. I get 9. So now let's try 48 minus 39, and I get 9. Let's just try 30 minus 21. I get 9. So I know this is moving at a constant. It's the first time, so I know right here. Subtract once, it's the same. That one is going to be linear. How'd you do? So what I want you to do is send me a picture of number 5 and 6 and show me how you did. Or let me know. Tell me I got them right, I got them wrong. What do you think? Okay? Tomorrow we're going to do the next page, and we're going to go over this on the Zoom. I recommend that you all attend my Zoom lessons. It is fun.